Good evening, good morning, YouTube. Salutations, wherever you're at. So recently, Patrick's Book Reviews created an original tag that I thought was pretty cool. It's called the Where You From tag. He said he deliberately left out the the copula there to be. I had a little bit of stuff going on this morning, and my dog injured himself, and I was pretty devastated by it and pretty worried about it all day, but he's actually doing better now, so he's sleeping, so I thought it'd be okay if I went in and recorded a couple of videos, and there's another one I need to remake. So anyway, I'll go ahead and do this tag. Like I said, I thought this was pretty cool. So, and the whole theme of it is, kind of talking about where you're from, which I really don't mind. I'm not going to put my address on here, but anyway, won't be quite as cool as Patrick's because Patrick lives abroad and he lives in Thailand, but I'll do the best I can. So, I got some okay stuff to say. So, number one is, where were you born and what was your town like? So, in fact, I was born in a certain city that has a certain team with a certain coach, and that is Chicago. I was born in northern Chicago, and it is, in fact, according to this map, the center of the universe, in case you guys didn't know that. Anyway, I lived there till I was I was probably about 10 or so when we moved from there, and then we moved. Actually, I lived in Aurora for a little while, which is also in Chicagoland. So Chicago is a massive city. It's like depending on what stats you look at, it's typically considered the third biggest metropolitan area in the United States. Although the D.C. area is getting pretty large too. So all my family is from. I was born near the Evanston area, which is kind of close to Northwestern University. My grandmother worked there for a while. But anyway. So all my family, they like the Cubs, which is why you see me wearing a Cubs hat. Although I wear team hats, I wear hats from other teams, but I don't watch many sports anymore. But when I do, I root for a Chicago team. So, and then Notre Dame. So Notre Dame is huge in Chicago. Like everybody loves Notre Dame football, so, like college football. Anyway, but yeah, we lived in Aurora for a while, and then we ended up moving to Ohio. So, but I've moved around since then, but I'll get to that here in a bit. But if you don't know much about Chicago, it's really, and I still go there quite frequently because I have family there. And I know it has a bit of a bad reputation, but they've done a really great job kind of fixing up the downtown area. And I think it's a really great city, man, with a lot of great history. You can get on the L, which is an above ground train. There's a really cool restaurant there called Ed DeBevick's, although I think they've changed the name. Maybe I'll look it up and I'll put it right here, but it's a restaurant where the waiters and waitresses are actually rude to you. I think it's called Mike's now, but it used to be called Ed DeBevick's. But then they'll get up and they sing, and it's really cool. Chicago's great, man. Definitely, it's definitely worth visiting. It has a lot of history. Just look up, just the history of Chicago. It's actually pretty interesting and pretty cool. All the stuff that has happened there, the Chicago fire, all that stuff. So anyway, the greatest city on earth, Chicago. Anyway, and then the second question is, where do you live now? What is it like? Well, currently I live in the Columbus, Ohio area, and I've been living here for several years now. There's a few, besides my family moving here when we were young, but it also has to do with work reasons. But it's not the only place I ever lived. So I actually went to school for welding, specifically stick welding or shielded metal arc welding, although I did a bunch of TIG welding as well, which is kind of part of that. So I originally started in pipe, but I also did construction. So I've lived in quite a few different places. I lived in Montana for a while, working on the pipeline there. It's incredible there, man. But I also lived in Idaho for a while, what you might call living. They had like these trailers there that you could stay in. Sometimes there were apartments you could go in, and they give you like a per diem pay. But I lived in Idaho for a while, kind of near Boise, but we were up near the border near Canada too, and I worked on the pipeline there. I did that for a few years. Idaho is really cool too, and you would think as far north as it is and how Boise is that it'd be really cold there, and it's really not. Their summers are really hotter than they are here, and even their winters are really better than they are here. They do get snow, but Ohio gets a lot of snow. So, but I think those are really great places, and I also worked in northern Minnesota for a while too, probably about 6 months. I was in Minnesota. Really great there too. Minnesota was a little bit different. I did do pipeline stuff there, but it was mostly construction I was doing there. And we were actually working on a facility that was like a sawmill for lumber. The lumber industry is really big there. It was one of my favorite jobs I've ever had, actually. I really loved Minnesota. So I've been around. I've also done quite a bit of traveling, but I went to, my family took me to Ireland when I was a kid. My family can trace its roots to some town, and it's like Cork in Ireland. I remember we went and visited there. I've only been the one time, and then we were in Liverpool for a little while in the UK, or England. Anyway, but what is it like where I live now? So Columbus is actually one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. Right now, even they're building a gigantic overpass. That's like a bridge and everything. They're saying it's going to take 10 years to build that. So, but Columbus, it's a pretty cool city. Something that's kind of unfortunate about Columbus is they don't, even though it's actually a pretty large city, they don't have many professional sports teams besides the Blue Jackets, the Columbus Blue Jackets, which I like hockey. I'm from the Chicago area. Chicago, and hockey's really big there. I actually played hockey. I played a lot. I was an athlete growing up. I'm not a huge guy, but I'm about 6 foot. I weigh about 175 pounds. And I was a decent athlete in school. I was just never as into it as other people. I was good at it, but it never really caught my attention the way it does for some people. But, I played baseball and football and hockey, and I wrestled. I played 3 sports a year for a very long time. Anyway, so I'm not talking about Columbus. But in Columbus, also the Ohio State Buckeyes are huge. Everybody loves the Buckeyes. Like everybody. And they are cool games to go to. So, you can go. Well, sometimes, I haven't gone in a few years now, but we've gone to the Scarlet and Gray game, which is like a preseason game where they kind of play themselves, which is pretty cool. It used to be affordable, but now it's incredibly expensive. So we don't really do that anymore. Hold on, let me pull the questions back up. I apologize. Anyway, so Columbus, it's a pretty cool city. They have the Columbus Convention Center here. Arnold Fest is here every year in Columbus, which is like a convention for like weightlifting and stuff. So I haven't gone to that in a few years either, but I used to really like going because I've been into, lifting weights and stuff since I was in high school and working out. So I try to stay in shape and stay healthy as much as I can, at least. Number 3. So I kind of already answered this. So have I lived anywhere else? So I already kind of said that. I worked on the pipeline when I was a welder. So, I worked in Montana, Idaho, Minnesota. I worked in Illinois for a while. I've worked all over the place. I never went south. A lot of guys do that for welding. You can kind of be like a subcontractor. I never did that. I always worked for other people. I never really saw the benefit of it because it's not that hard to get to that early level of subcontracting where you get your own truck and equipment for welding. But it's really hard to break through for the next part of that. Like it's easy when it's just like you and one other person, maybe 3. But like once you start getting bigger than that, you need a lot of investment to do that. And it never really appealed to me to do that because I saw so many guys struggle with it. So, but a lot of guys will go down to Texas and do that. I mean, people did it in Montana and people did it in North Dakota and stuff too. So, some people like doing that, and that's fine. I didn't like all the traveling, so that's why I stopped doing it. I was a young man. I had a family, so it just didn't work for me. But I've considered doing it again at times because I kind of like construction, but welding pays pretty good. But when it's outdoors like that, it is incredibly hot. Like it can get so hot, it's like unbearable because you're wearing all this equipment. Maybe I'll put a picture up here. Like you got a helmet on, you got to wear long sleeve shirts, and I've done it at times where I've been so hot I would just roll my sleeves up, but it's really dangerous to do that. I've been stuck with a ultra hot piece of metal, like molten metal, before. It hit my ankle, but man, it hurts so bad. Oh, it was extreme. I have a big old scar there to this day. Anyway, sorry. So number 4 is, who are some famous authors or works of literature from your home? Oh man, I messed up. I should have looked this up because there are a bunch of people, both from Chicago and Ohio. Obviously, Ulysses Grant is from Ohio, but he's more of a famous general president. But I was trying to think of any others off the top of my head. Dang it, I'm sorry, I should have looked that up, so I messed it up. Maybe I'll edit some in here, and I'll just put some names right here, because there are a bunch from both Ohio and Illinois, so. So number 5 is, what's the book culture like where you live? Libraries, bookstores. So I live outside of Columbus, and kind of where I live at, actually, there's like 3 major cities, maybe kind of 4 major cities, not really major, but kind of bigger cities. None of these cities are that big. Columbus, compared to other cities around, the U.S. really isn't huge. There's about, well, I think 2.5 million people in the Columbus metro area. Cleveland is right around 3.5 million, and Cincinnati's pretty similar to that. So Ohio's a little bit different than other states. Although Ohio is one of the most populated states in the U.S., it doesn't really have that like major city that a lot of other like highly populated states do. Like Indiana doesn't have as many people, but like everybody knows Indianapolis is like the city of Indiana, you know, or Pennsylvania, it's like Philadelphia, you know what I mean? Or Illinois, it's Chicago, or Wisconsin, it's Milwaukee. Minnesota, it's the Twin Cities and Minneapolis. But Ohio's a little bit different. Columbus is the most central location, but, you know, Cincinnati sits on the Ohio River and Cleveland is on Lake Erie. So, like, they've had, you know, economical advantages because of that. But like I said, in recent years, Columbus has been catching up, and it's a very, very fast-growing city right now. And I think that has to do with its central location. It's really big in the tech industry, but specifically with computer components. So, you know, anyway, so Columbus has some stuff going for it. But just talking about what the book culture is like here. So anyway, I live outside of Columbus, and where I live, we have a huge public library that has multiple branches throughout what is essentially a smaller city outside of Columbus. I guess I didn't talk about the built-up area here, but you go from Columbus, and then there's like the Dayton-Springfield area, and then you go a little further south in Cincinnati, and all that stuff is within, you know, from Dayton to Columbus is only about a 40-minute drive, you know, maybe a little less, and then from Dayton to Cincinnati is about a 45-minute drive, and then you got other places in between, like Hamilton's in between Cincinnati and Dayton, and Hamilton's a decent-sized city itself, and then you got Springfield in between Dayton and Columbus. So, like, you can just go hours and just see towns and cities and little towns all the way through the highway. You know, if you go to Dayton, you're sitting on 70 and 75, which is a pretty major highway intersection. So, but the book culture is, like I said, we got that big library. There's a handful of used bookstores near me. There used to be a really good one about 20 minutes from my house, and they've changed it recently, and they've gone more towards collectibles. So they do have some like kind of collectible paperbacks in there that aren't terribly expensive. Like I recently found an Edgar Rice Burroughs book with a Frank Frazetta cover on it. That was pretty neat. It was only $5, so I picked it up. That used to be the best one, and they actually had comic books and used books in there. It was a really cool store. It had like 3 storefronts. One of the storefronts was actually for like gaming, but like tabletop gaming, like Warhammer and stuff, which I've never been into, but I think I can see the appeal. And then beyond that, you know, I got Half Price Books. We got Second and Charles. Second and Charles is a little bit farther from my house. And then there's just like local used bookstores. There's a handful. There's one I just tried out recently. There's quite a few near my house. It's just, I'm kind of equidistant between a few. So, like Half Price Books is only about 20 minutes from my house. That one collectible bookstore, that's only about 20 minutes from my house. There's a few others that I don't remember the names off the top of my head, but anyway, so you can definitely find used bookstores. I haven't found a really great one, but I have a few good ones. And Second and Charles is a really great store. I think it's a bit better than Half Price Books, but it's just further away from my house. So anyway, so that's pretty much the book culture here. I don't really know a whole lot of other people that read in my daily life. My grandma does, but she reads different stuff than me. So I've read some of her stuff. Like I read, she had, like I read The Handmaid's Tale. Like I got that from my grandma. Like she had it there, and I picked it up and I read it, and that was really good. She reads a lot of Greg Iles, so I picked up, and I like Greg Iles. I don't read a bunch of them anymore, but I did really enjoy like Natchez Burning and stuff, and so all that stuff I got from my grandma. But anyway, so I don't know if that was interesting or not. Like I said, I'll edit a couple little maps in there. So that's all for today, YouTube. Good night, good day, wherever you're at. Thank you, Patrick. Oh, I'm gonna well, I guess I can tag some other channels. See, Patrick tagged a bunch of people, and I couldn't name some channels. I'll put Alan's Reads in there for sure, and I'll have to look up some channels maybe he didn't tag. But anyway, that's all for today, YouTube.